Welcome back to Spider-Man Renew Your Vows. This is a tale about Spider-Man in an alternate universe where he stayed married to Mary Jane and they had a kid. Well, you would think that that's where the story would end, but no, Mary Jane got a suit that allows her to have spider powers, and they discovered that their kid also has spider powers, so they're just one big super-powered spider family. In a world where Professor Xavier's school still exists because Professor Xavier still exists. And what happens if you may be a mutant? You have to go to that school and try out to be an X-Man. That's the basis of this story. It's fun, I enjoyed it, and I hope you do too. Welcome to the Complete Story Series, where I take trade paperbacks and single issues and I break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then I read them dramatically back to you. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art, well, it's owned by its respective companies. Now let's get on with the show. In our last video, we met the Spider family. They were Peter Parker, his wife Mary Jane, and his daughter Annie Mae. Peter and Mary Jane wanted to let Annie lead a normal life, growing up with her spider powers. But then, the Mole Man attacked, and it was kind of funny, and I'm going to link that video down below so you guys can go check it out, because it was the Mole Man. Mole Man was actually scary. Anyway, after seeing visions of her parents in danger, Annie rushed over to their aid, and at the end of the day, Peter and Mary Jane agreed that maybe Annie can join them at being a superhero. As Spiderling! She really tried a different name, Peter wouldn't have it. As Peter steps through the door to his home, he looks around asking, "Are you kidding me?" Everyone in the living room shouts, "Surprise!" And Annie runs up, stating, "Happy birthday, Daddy." Mary Jane hugs Peter, saying that Daddy doesn't get surprised, he just gets embarrassed, which is much better. And as the party goes on, Peter and Mary Jane watch as Annie tries to pick out the least terrible allergen-free cupcake when they all suddenly hear a voice. Charles Xavier, telepathically telling them that he's sorry for crashing the party. But Annie is actually the reason that he's here, and he was hoping that they could stop by the school tomorrow. The next day, as the Parkers web onto the school grounds, Xavier welcomes them to the Xavier School, and Annie says that she's pretty sure that the bald guy's talking in her head. Charles tells the family that he's pretty sure they've already met Logan and Jean, but the young one is their daughter, Kate, who they sometimes call Shine. As Annie and Kate hit it right off, Charles asks Jubilee if she could show the kids around the school while him and the adults talk. Jubilee tells him no problem, and as they leave, Jubilee says, "Huh? Already holding hands?" It seems Kate has taken a real shine to her. Annie says that her mother said that she was going to be a natural babysitter. Maybe she can babysit for Kate sometime. And Jubilee tells her that if things work out, she's going to be spending a lot more time here anyway. Annie then asks what does she mean by that, and Jubilee says that the professor wants her parents to send her to school here. It's not an ordinary school. But as Annie tries to say she likes where she's at, she suddenly sees a vision of Logan and her father being attacked. Meanwhile, in Charles Xavier's office, Mary Jane is shouting, "No, Annie in a private school for special kids? That's exactly what we don't want for her." Logan tells Mary Jane that they live in a complicated world, and Jean says that she's a mother too. This school would be a safe place for her. Peter then says that they could be right, they do have to protect Annie. Mary Jane asks how? By locking her up, shutting her away from her friends and her family, from us? She then storms out of the office, and before Peter can go after her, Charles telepathically tells him that though his instinct to calm and comfort her is commendable, that is not what she needs. Allow her space and time to reflect and see what we have to offer here. Back outside, Annie gets back up, telling everyone that she's fine. It was her spider sense, which is just sometimes weird, and she can see things into the future. Beast jumps down asking if everyone's alright. Why is the young girl in such distress? And she shouts out, "Look out, look out, look out!" And then at the last second, grabs Kate and jumps out of the way of an incoming blast. Magneto floats down, telling them, "I'm sorry you children had to see that. My war is not with you. So, Mist Mistress, please be gentle." Mist then swirls around everyone and tells everyone nighty-night. Over at the school halls, Mary Jane looks at the children as Scott tells her that they're remarkable, aren't they? Mary Jane tells him yeah, and Scott goes on saying that he does think that their school would be good for their daughter. And he's not saying that because he's Charles' errand boy either. Mary Jane asks, why does everyone treat him like God? And Scott begins to explain that everyone looks up to Charles because of how he handled the Superhuman Registration Act a few years ago. Charles self-appointed himself the representative for mutant kind and proposed an alternative option. Instead of having everyone with superpowers publicly make themselves known, Charles sought to self-police the mutant and superpowered communities, which is why he contacted them. Mary Jane says that sounds terrible, and Scott tells her yeah, but not as terrible as what Charles claimed was the alternative. He said that there would have been some kind of civil war, but we'll never know. All I can say is that because of the fallout, it cost me the woman that I loved. And it also killed the blind faith that I had in the man called Professor X. Back at Charles' office, he says that he fears he may have made a poor impression on his wife. Perhaps they should discuss this matter at home. But as Peter goes to respond, his spider sense begins to go off, and as the mist fills the room, everyone begins to fall asleep. Over at Cerebro, Annie begins to wake up asking what's going on, and Magneto tells her that she is in the secure vault of Xavier's most potent weapon. Behold, Cerebro! A device that can exert subtle influences on those who are like him, the future of human evolution. As Magneto goes on, Jubilee tells him to stop. He's scaring them, and Annie shouts, "She's okay! I was worried that you got hurt like the big hairy guy." And Magneto tells her, "No, I wouldn't hurt my secret ally, and thanks to her, I now control this weapon." Back at Charles' office, Mist walks through checking on everyone, and as she whistles, she looks at Logan, who's still awake with webbing over his mouth and nose. Logan jumps up to swipe at her, but Peter webs her back and throws her into a bookshelf, telling them that if they want to make a good impression, he should probably keep the bloodshed to a minimum. Logan starts spitting, telling him, "The webbing tastes like armpit hair." And Peter tells him, "Yeah, I've heard that, but it acts like a filter in my mask. So who's that woman anyway?" Logan explains that it's Mist Mistress, one of Magneto's Brotherhood of Mutants people, and if she's here, so is she. Peter begins to panic, and Logan pulls down on his mask, telling him that he's got a pretty good idea where everyone's at. So how about we go and get on with it? Outside of the building, Mary Jane begins to notice the mist coming out of Charles' office, and before her and Scott can run in, a voice tells them, "Hang on a second." Blob jumps down in front of the door, telling them, "You're the web woman, right? Well, you ain't going anywhere." Back in Cerebro, Jubilee asks, how is he going to use Cerebro? Doesn't he need a telepath? And a voice calls out, telling everyone that he has one. And Emma Frost walks into the room. Annie turns to Jubilee asking, "Why is she doing this?" And Jubilee kneels down, telling her that she's too young to understand. Annie says that she's not, she's almost 9! Jubilee then goes on to say that she spent her whole life waiting for the professor to make things better, but nothing ever changes. They have to hide who they are, what they do, but Magneto will change that, and if people get hurt, that's the price they're gonna have to pay. Annie says that means you're friends! You might think that you're all grown up, but you're not. And when I was little, I asked if I could use my powers and my parents said no. I would have to wait. And you know what? They were right. But don't tell them that. And in turn, we help each other. Annie goes on, saying that even if the professor isn't right, these people are wrong. And Kate starts to cry, shouting, "Wrong, wrong, wrong!" And everything begins to shine. A bright light kills the room, blinding everyone. And Magneto asks, "What is that?" Jubilee tells him that that's Jean and Logan's daughter, and her nickname is Shine. And when Magneto looks back, he sees the 2 young girls gone, and he tells Jubilee to go find them. Jubilee starts running down the hallway, but up in the air vents, Annie is holding herself in place while Kate is hanging onto her back. Annie whispers that she won't let anything bad happen to her, and they need to get going. Down the hallway, Logan and Peter show up asking where are their daughters, and Annie looks out of the vent saying, "This is what she saw with her spider sense!" Jubilee, without responding, begins to use her powers on Logan and Peter when Annie shouts for her to leave her daddy alone. She punches out of the grate, jumping down on Jubilee, screaming, "I hate you!" Jubilee starts to get back up, telling her that she never meant to, and Logan stops her, telling her, "Do what? Turn your back on the people who gave you a home? Siding with the Brotherhood will get them a revolution, but the one sure thing about a revolution is that people die." Suddenly, all of the mutants scream out in pain, and Annie asks, "What is this?" Peter says that it's the same thing that hit Jean and Charles. It must be a psychic attack. Peter, Mary Jane, and Annie all run into Cerebro, and as they do, Emma is telepathically telling Magneto to do her a favor and handle them. Magneto holds out his arm, ripping the metal out of the ground, and everyone webs up to avoid falling. As Peter and Annie jump off the wall, Peter says that he's starting to feel, oh no, the Region Tech! Back on the walkway, Mary Jane taps into Peter's powers and runs in, punching Emma out. Annie looks down and says, "Mom's pretty cool, huh?" And Peter says, "Yeah, she always seems to remind me of that." Later, once the Brotherhood is taken away, Logan says, "So, see you next year?" Annie tells him that he'll need to talk to her parents first, and Peter looks at Mary Jane and they agree that they need to talk about it after things settle down. Later that night in Manhattan, Liz Allen, Norman Osborn's ex-wife, looks over the new footage of Annie when they fought Mole Man. Miss January says that the little Norman seemed rather interested in her, though she's worried about his obsession with the Spider-Man. Perhaps she should interfere. Liz looks at a picture of little Normie and says that physically he's a child and her son. However, legally he's an adult and independent. She then piles up a small glass of black liquid, saying that she will do whatever she needs though, no matter what it costs, no matter who it hurts. A mother will always defend her son. And that brings us to the conclusion of the Spider-Man Renew Your Vows X-Men chapter. It was epic. It was incredible. I enjoyed it, and if you enjoyed it, click the video right here. And if you enjoyed that video, which you may or may not because you probably didn't click it if you're still listening to me, click the video right over here. And if you're still not subscribed, click my face. It's like down here somewhere. Yeah, that'd be great. Awesome. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next time right here at Comicstorian!